Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Friday, September 24th installment of the Silicon Insider, the only uncensored look at life and business in the Valley. My name is Mike Malone. I'm here with special contributor Scott Budman of NBC Bay Area. Our producer is Jordan Henderson. Our East Coast correspondent is Bob Grove. And our host, as always, is the Silicon Valley Business Journal. Well, this week's going to be a lot like last week. We got to start out with the Theranos trial. That's taking up every second of your working life, isn't it?
Yeah, we get there early to get a seat and to see Elizabeth Holmes walk in. And it has, I must say, I've learned so much about court. And I had covered Theranos and I've read about it. And I'm still learning a lot about it and a lot about her. And this trial is fascinating. And it is really the ticket in town. People
Now,
are coming out of
are
the
you like
woodwork.
sitting there with the New York Times person on one side of you and the Ars Technica person on the other side?
Yeah, it's interesting because you'll see finance reporters, CNBC is there, CNN is there often, and then, right, you have the legal reporters as well. And so the networks are there, both for news and for tech and business. But also, and I think these are the people who I'm trying to follow on Twitter right now, the legal correspondents,
Yeah.
because they kind of know, if this happened yesterday, that is likely to happen tomorrow. And so getting to know them and watch what they do has been interesting as well.
Now, are they allowed to bring cameras in, or
No,
is it you have to
not
have
into federal court.
courtroom artists?
Yes,
Yes.
sketch artists.
Oh, interesting.
Right. And it's interesting because Holmes we see
Isn't
walk
that
in
cool?
and
It's
out
the
every day.
21st century. We have somebody there with a pastel
Yep.
doing a drawing. Yeah.
And for those of us who file television stories multiple times a day, that gets challenging when you can't bring a camera in.
Yeah, you're just doing stand-ups outside, right?
Yeah, and I know we're going to talk about General James Mattis. James Mattis left out a side exit, so we didn't know how to shoot him. I happened to be walking back to our news van, and he walked right past me into the parking lot. So I got some video on my phone,
Yeah.
gave it to our network. Everybody was like, "Wow, we got the exclusive of James Mattis." That's what it's come down to, is pulling out a phone to get him on his way to his car.
Okay, so he's like the first star to show up, right?
Yeah.
Mad Dog Mattis.
Yep.
General Mattis, the warrior monk, makes an appearance. Okay, what was that like?
It was very interesting. He has a demeanor about him and a lot of respect. Remember, post Theranos, he was our Secretary of Defense under President Trump. So everybody knows of him in the military world.
Yes.
But if you haven't paid attention to Holmes or Theranos, and I guess by definition the jury, they say, hasn't all that much, you don't know necessarily that he was A, on the board, and B, on the board so that they could get these Theranos machines out into the field of battle.
Yeah, and didn't he say that he gave them information about an upcoming device or product? I read something that kind of astounded me, that he was talking to a company he was investing in about, proprietary military technology.
He says now that he was not giving out information either on or off the record about Theranos, and he was actually surprised by that because he thought, wait a minute, if we've got this life-saving, world-changing device, why aren't we talking to the Wall Street Journal?
Yeah.
I'm James Mattis. Everybody knows I'm on the board of directors.
And he put in 80 grand, right?
He put in 85 grand of his own money.
Okay.
And apparently, according to testimony, pulled in $150,000 in salary as a board member and had a whole lot of Theranos stock. And I guess the $150,000 was probably the only money he got out of the deal.
Now, there are limitations on what a director of a company can do if you're like sitting on the board. But it seems to me that he should have been a little suspicious that he was only talking to one person. Now the CEO is supposed to be the representative of the company talking at the board meetings, but wouldn't you like to talk to somebody out there on the line?
Yes, and two things about that. One, he did admit under cross-examination that he really doesn't know about healthcare or medical devices.
Yeah.
And that eventually, but perhaps not in time, he was suspicious that his fellow board members knew nothing about healthcare or medical devices. And I think that's going to become a sort of a big talking point in this trial. As we know, Elizabeth Holmes stacked the board with wealthy older men who were politically connected, financially connected, VC connected, but really didn't have anything to do with healthcare.
So they really weren't directors. They were a letterhead. when you get right down, because the directors are supposed to actually understand the company's business and business in general to be
Right.
able to give intelligent advice.
And that
These
came
guys
up
were just names on top of top of a newsletter.
largely, yeah, and that came up a lot in the cross-examination, where General Mattis admitted he wasn't contributing all that much. Although in the early days, he really did try to get those machines out into the field of battle and get them tested. And he said that's sort of where he became suspicious was, why can't I get these things tested? We have to test them, he insisted,
Sure.
before we bring them out into, testing on soldiers. And he was unable to get them. Well, we pretty much know it's because they didn't work. The other thing that the prosecution is really trying to use General Mattis for is they asked him, who did you report to? Elizabeth Holmes. Who led the board meetings? Elizabeth Holmes. Who made the decisions? He said Elizabeth Holmes did. That's very important for the prosecution because we know the defense is going to try to come up with a defense that leaves her out of the picture a lot.
Right. She's trying to be a victim, and she seems to be the entire choke point between Theranos and all of its investors, including Mad Dog Mattis.
So far, that's what he said. And the thing that really stuck with me about his testimony was when he said he, a four-star general, a very decorated, respected man, only spoke to one person, and that was her.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's the betting line now among the reporters around you and legal folks you talk to?
Well, it's hard
Settlement?
the legal folks I talk to seem to think settlement. 20 years seems like a lot.
Yeah.
The only similar case of this nature that I can think of, at least in the
precedent,
the tech arena, would be Martin Shkreli. You may remember him. He was called the Farmer Bro. He
Right.
jacked up drug prices, which did harm people,
Right.
but nobody accused him of murder.
Right.
Elizabeth Holmes made some people very nervous with these Theranos tests in Walgreens, including one of the patients we saw testify, but nobody died because of them, and so 20 years seems like a lot.
Okay, well, you said there was a shocking moment that the courtroom went quiet.
Yeah, early this week, they brought in a woman who was pregnant, but she had miscarriages in the past, so she
Yeah.
was taking this one very carefully, doing a lot of tests. She went into a Walgreens to take a Theranos test, and the Theranos test told her she had lost the baby, that she had miscarried. Her nurse practitioner was a little skeptical
Yeah.
based on what she had seen up to that point. So she, after some emotional time where the woman was very upset, suggested, don't do anything yet, take another test. She went to Quest Diagnostics, took the test. It showed, no, your levels are perfect. You
Okay.
carrying this to term, you're going to be fine. Sure enough, she ended up having a very
Well, that
healthy
could have been a
baby.
disaster. If she was supposed to, be bedridden, take it easy, do all those things to try to prevent a miscarriage, and she said, "Oh, I'm not carrying a child anymore. I can go back out to my normal life," and then she had lost the child.
Right. I mean, there are all sorts of things that how this could have gone wrong, and they had both the nurse practitioner and the patient on the stand. And I'll tell you, when she was talking emotionally about what that Theranos test told her, it didn't matter if you were a parent or not, or a man or a woman, you were silent. It was one of the rare moments in the courtroom where you just felt the emotion, as opposed to up to that point where so much of it was information that I had a feeling was going over a lot of people's heads.
Right.
This was something
This
everybody
brought it
could
home.
relate to. Yeah,
Yeah.
very much so.
Okay, well, 7 years. That's what the
I'm
the
not-
drug guy got.
Right, that's what Martin Shkreli got, and
If you were a prosecuting attorney and this was a big scalp for you, would you settle?
well, look, I don't know. I mean, I can't put myself in that
Is
position.
this a message to the entire tech industry?
Yes, regardless of what happens, this is
Yeah.
a message to the entire tech industry because, as we know, plenty of people prior to Elizabeth Holmes have gotten away with lying to investors,
Yes.
even to the public. They've gotten away with things, maybe not medical devices, but software and items and products and hardware that have really been defective.
Well, we cheered on the pirates of Silicon Valley.
Right, the whole work fast and break things.
Yeah.
Theranos worked too fast and they
Yeah.
broke too many things, and now they're really paying the price. And I have a feeling, unless Elizabeth Holmes completely walks,
Yeah.
there's going to be a bit of a chill over the valley, and maybe that's a good thing.
Might be.
Yeah.
You know, there's a dangerous thing in the fail fast mentality.
Yes.
But at least you got to admit you failed.
Right.
Yeah.
And that didn't happen.
That didn't happen here. Okay, well, just like last week, Facebook.
The company that did coin the phrase "work fast and break things." I believe.
Yes, indeed. Now on top of the Wall Street Journal's brilliant multi-part series, we have evidence. It's like every part of Facebook is involved in something. So now we have WhatsApp apparently being used. We're being used by all these Haitians to coordinate where to hit the Texas border. I mean, the whole Haitian thing is interesting because some of these people that are now being sent back to Haiti haven't been in Haiti for years. They went to Brazil, had careers and all of that, always in the back of their mind, we'll get to the States someday. Suddenly WhatsApp says, hey, it's wide open, they're welcoming you, and you should go to Ciudad Acuna, right across the river from Del Rio, Texas, and that's the way in. And that's why we have 14,000 people underneath the overpass. I mean, I don't think I've seen a company so snake bit in such a short amount of time as Facebook is. And they seem to be handling it kind of blithely, like, oh yeah, well, what are you going to do about it?
Even the former, and you're seeing a lot of former Facebook employees come out of the woodwork saying, what can you do? When this is the platform, this is going to happen. Facebook proved it, and they seem to be sticking with it. Now, are they making some concessions? Well, a little bit of a shakeup. Their chief technology officer is out, and Andrew Bosworth, who was one of the very early guys, who is a trusted right-hand man to Mark Zuckerberg and to Sheryl Sandberg, is in as CTO. Not sure if that, again, you can't use the word fixes things for Facebook because Facebook will even tell you it's not fixable. It's a social network. It's a platform that's wide open, and if it's out there, it's going to be.
It's a measurable percentage of the world's population.
Right.
So you don't just get Menlo Park. You get Somalia mixed into the thing.
Well, and you get even within America. Not to mention, you get people who use it and then people who abuse it.
Right.
And I don't think there's a way to cut back on the abuse. I mean, Lord knows Facebook has tried and they have a lot of money to spend on it. But if it's wide open,
right,
there's going to be abuse.
It's wide open, but
not to excuse that abuse.
Once
by
again,
the way,
you know me, I'm a free speech absolutist, but it seems to me the company can put out warnings. We've discovered that it's wrecking teenage girls around the United States and increasing suicide rates and all that. Parents, do your duty. Control this. I mean, it seems to me that's the minimum they can do. I don't want them censoring anybody or shutting it down unless it's actually for the commission of a crime. But short of that, they've got to engage themselves instead of saying, well, we wound this machine up and now we're just stepping back and letting it go.
The problem is largely because it is so wide open.
Yeah.
If you have a teenage daughter and she has 10, 15, maybe 20 friends that she can access on Instagram, that's a different world than everybody who potentially can gang up on people. And yet Instagram isn't Instagram and Facebook isn't a trillion-dollar company if each of us can access 10 or 15 people.
Yeah.
It just isn't. The advertisers wouldn't be satisfied. And so it's this devil's bargain they seem to have.
They don't seem to have that kind of hesitation about getting involved when it comes to political things. I've noticed they're willing to deal with political situations and questions, not with any cultural or social ones.
Well, right, but even then, I mean, they're saying, there are allegations that they gave Trump a free pass and gave misinformation a free pass. And the thing about misinformation on Facebook, and we've seen this with COVID-19, is they're saying, well, we're cutting down and we've eliminated millions of accounts. And even if they get rid of 90%, heck, 95% of the misinformation, there's still a ton of misinformation left, and that's the problem. It's built without 100% fallibility, because how could it have?
Right. It can't be infallible.
Right.
I don't like companies that are sending out hinted memos that they know about all sorts of stuff, and they're not being upfront about it with shareholders or their users.
Right. And I wonder if they, if I guess it would be bad to say if Zuckerberg had a come to Jesus moment, with weird metaphor, but if someone just came out there of his stature and said, "We know it's bad.
Yeah.
We either shut it down or we keep going. We've chosen to keep going. We know it's bad." What would investors do? What would employees do?
It's a good question.
I don't know.
I don't know either. But maybe there's a warning label. I mean,
use this at your own peril.
We put warning labels on, rap music. Why can't we do it on social networks?
Yeah, I guess so.
On cigarettes?
I mean, if someone my age said, "Hey, I'm getting into rap. What's your advice?" I'd say, "Great. If you have young children, think about the language, but enjoy."
Yeah.
When parents say, "Hey, my kid's on Facebook,"
40 hours a week.
Yeah, I tell them, good luck. Try your best to put the privacy settings in, but it's just too gigantic. It's hard to regulate. Yeah.
Okay. The economy. This is interesting because we're getting real contradictory messages. You've been busy in a courtroom. Did you watch the stock market this week?
Yes.
Falls 900 on Tuesday, and it's gotten it all back by the end of the week. What does that mean? Does that mean it fell 900 because they actually thought that the $3.1 trillion bill is going to get through Congress, and they realized no, it's never going to make it because Manchin isn't ever going to support it. So the economy is going to be okay for a little while.
I mean, if it were me, I think the 900-point drop was more a reaction to that developer in China, Casagrande.
Well, that's the next thing I want to talk about.
Well, and I think that's what triggered it because, stimulus or no stimulus. However, I mean, come on, we've seen some crazy political times in the last 4 or 5 years, and the stock market has steadily gone up. So what's the one thing that brought it down? The lockdown and the pandemic. But politically, the stock market has done fine.
Right.
So I don't know that that's but the idea that a giant developer in China could go belly up. Remember, in 2008, it was
let's
our
talk
banks
about
and our housing.
Casagrande.
Yeah.
$300 billion of debt.
That's staggering for one company. I don't even know
how did they manage to borrow that much money? And China's starting to warn companies in its own economy.
Right.
There's a fear that if Casagrande goes down, if the Chinese government decides not to save it, that maybe in China nothing's too big, to go under. First thing that might crash, interestingly, is the Korean market. Korean stock market actually may collapse if Casagrande goes, and that could trigger a housing crash all over the world.
Well, look back on
Economic
2008.
crash.
2008 was the last time we really had a huge recession. Some almost, said we were in depression, and that was a domino effect. Lehman Brothers went down. It took other banks and financial institutions, all those mortgage companies going down. It affected our housing market, which trickled into the job market and our whole economy. And those were the dominoes that gradually fell.
And it found the weak spots, the mortgage situation.
Right. And eventually that went global. There were a lot of European markets that were hit, et cetera. And so I think people realize, what Thomas Friedman said, the flat earth, we're all connected, that something like this in China, like you just said, could trigger other things in Asia and then Europe and then
it
here.
could hit here,
Yeah.
in theory, because do we have a housing bubble?
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, it looks like it, but it doesn't seem like it's going to pop here.
Well, and by definition, a
soon.
bubble happens largely because there are companies that are comfortable with debt and investors that are comfortable with debt. Well, if we see something go under because of...
There goes the comfort zone. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's why people panic and jump out. And I think we were just a couple of steps away from seeing those dominoes fall. And for whatever reason, over the last couple of days, people started to feel better about it.
Yeah.
But Casagrande, from what I understand, is still sort of teetering.
Oh, absolutely. I think they just missed their most recent, was it $80 billion payment?
That's a big payment.
That's a big payment. Meanwhile, nobody wants to go back to work in the United States. I mean, this is a very interesting trend. You see Target itself is announcing it's going to spend $75 million on hiring fewer holiday workers, which sounds kind of bizarre, but they're going to offer their current employees more hours because apparently this is another case. They can't find anybody to work.
Right. It's still hard to get people back to those jobs, especially when it comes to young people and people who have been out of work. And our economy is still not balanced, I guess is the
Yeah.
word.
But buoyant enough to make people feel like they actually can choose not to go back to work for a while.
I guess so, yeah. And I don't know how long that lasts. And I don't know if it's really just dependent on stimulus money or unemployment money,
Yeah.
or just how many people are saying, look, my friend over there has the same degree, the same work experience, and she's making $17 an hour more. So why would I go back to this? Because
Yes.
it's just unbalanced. And so, I hate to say good for Target and Amazon, but at least they're saying, okay, we're going to pay people more to try to, make it worth their while to show up to work.
Yeah, well, when David Allen and I wrote The Autonomous Revolution, we have a whole section on labor, and that we seem to be moving towards a situation where more and more people in our society are not only going to be unemployed, but they're going to be unemployable for maybe their entire lives, because machines and AI and all that they're slowly taking over fractions of our, a percentage of our economy. At some point, they take over enough that there's large bodies of people that are just basically living on guaranteed annual income, bread and circuses, while a few remaining people are actually contributing and working. This might be a warm up for that. It might be a rehearsal.
It might be, but it might also be, I mean, remember the 19, 20 months we've had of this pandemic, everything has been upended, especially
Yes.
when it comes to what you do at home and how you take care of your kids. And the one thing that tells me that the economy isn't going to shift all that much is because we're still in this pandemic.
Yes.
We still have a lot of cases. We're still concerned about going to, the movie theater or the gym or whatever. In some cases, even friends' houses. And by now, we were kind of supposed to be over that. And we were going to be talking about, hey, remember what our economy used to be before the post-pandemic times, but we're not there yet.
No, you can sense this society wants to be there.
Yes.
Yeah, we're just chomping at the bit. Did you read that research came out, I think, yesterday? There's been an obesity epidemic among young people in the United States. They haven't got enough sunlight. They haven't got enough exercise. The secondary effects of the lockdown are, the reckoning on that's still to come. Okay, the European Union, the good old European Union, doing their European Union thing. Uh, they're going to make USB-C port standard in smartphones, tablets, cameras, phones, portable speakers, and handheld video games. And needless to say, Apple's not happy about this one. I like the Apple plug, because I'm always tripping over power wires, and it just yanks out from the magnet on an Apple device. But apparently, according to the EU, in their wisdom for the average person, European consumers were frustrated long enough about incompatible charges piling up in their drawers. We gave industry plenty of time to come up with their own solutions. Now the time is right for legislative action for a common charger.
I mean, that's where we are. Like, say that out loud again. Legislative action for a common charger. Come on.
Because they have too many in their desk drawers. I mean, is this what the EU? This is what everybody complains about the EU. They micromanage how many olive trees you can have in your backyard in Spain. I mean.
Yeah, I think.
And if they can get a dig in on Apple or Google or Facebook, they're going to do it.
Yeah. I think George Orwell, had he lived longer, would have written a book called Legislative Action for a Common Charger. Would have been sort of the modern version.
Yeah, that could be my next T-shirt. Okay, and finally, the reviews are in. The winner of last week's Apple product rollout was, drumroll, the Apple Mini.
Yeah, we talked about this, and
Tim Heron nailed it.
Yeah.
He got it before anybody else.
I think he was right, because everything else was so incremental.
Yeah.
That you could almost say, gee, do I really need to shell out, between $1,000 and $1,300 for a new phone just because the camera's a bit better and there's a little bit better battery life? The watch came out, the screen's a little different, no change in battery life. In other words, especially given that many of us are, trying to pinch our pennies.
It's like Apple is Star Wars, and the Mini is Baby Yoda.
That's not bad.
It's cute, powerful. I mean, it seems to have everything going for it. I read one reviewer they really like it because they like its it's cute,
Mhm.
and it comes in purple, which I guess is a big deal. It makes a better ebook reader than the Kindle. If you're in bed at night with your spouse, because apparently they can turn the screen down more and it's not as glaring.
No, it makes a good e-reader, and the difference between the iPad and the iPad Mini and e-readers is that you also have all these computer functions.
Sure.
So it does that much more. It costs more. But yeah, I had a feeling this would be a form factor people really liked. And
But one objection,
what's
it's
that?
expensive.
Yes, that's true.
64 gigs for $500. That's a lot of money for a thing that's 11-inch screen, but I guess it's a good screen. And the bezel is nice and thick, so you can hold it without putting your fingers on the screen.
Mhm.
If you want 256G, $649. That's a lot of money for a tablet.
Exactly, and you have to justify that for a tablet because if you have a phone, and everybody has a phone, you've spent money on that phone. And if you do a lot of work, you probably have a laptop.
Yes.
Because the tablet revolution, as cool as it's been, hasn't knocked off the laptop yet.
Right.
So if you have those two things, how do you justify that third screen? Because it helps you read in bed.
5G, that's why you get
5G.
it.
I mean,
Because it's cute.
right.
No,
Well, because the libraries aren't open yet, and you need to download your ebooks.
Right.
There you go.
And to look at those other websites at night in bed while your spouse is asleep. No, I mean, everyone, from what I read from the reviewers, everyone seems to want one, but I'm not sure all of them know why. If they can justify it to themselves. It's like, I love this thing. I really would like to have one. But I got all these other devices, and this is a lot of dough. And I wonder if it's going to sell as well as its popularity suggests.
I think this could be the hot tech item for Christmas.
If you can get it. I mean, look at the supply chain.
Well, that's the big question. Apple,
I would hate to be a parent of young children trying to find Christmas presents with the state of the current supply chain and going into kids' stores and trying to find the popular items.
I think that's going to be the story of the Christmas season, not just for kids items, but for iPads.
Yeah.
And all those ads where, and I don't know if this ever happens in the real world, never in my world, but someone walks outside and there's a wrapped car in their driveway.
Yeah.
Okay, good luck getting a car this Christmas.
Yeah.
All these consumer items are sort of under cloudy skies right now because of the chip shortage.
You're gonna have some interesting. You're gonna be out during the holidays, covering all the fights that are going to be breaking out in all of these stores, and dealing with and talking to tired Target workers who are putting in 20 hours a day. So that's it for now, folks. You can find us on the Silicon Valley Business Journal homepage, as well as on Spotify, Anchor, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next week. Autumn is here. Bye-bye.